So today I'm going to talk about something that I've sort of been abstractly thinking about for a while, but that recently I've got a bit more clarity around. And that's the topic of developer archetypes. To summarize, most people aren't good at every job that you have on a software development team. And if you've been a developer for a while, you've probably noticed that there are a mixture of talents on your team. And, perhaps you've been asked to assign work or got a funny feeling that someone isn't right for a particular job. For me, I get that funny feeling when I think a particular piece of work requires attention to detail or a certain kind of reasoning, and if a developer has a pattern of leaving gaps in their work. So what are some tasks that we need to perform on a software development team in order to deliver working software? Here are a list of 10 characteristic tasks. Following established patterns. Researching new technology. Planning build order or system architecture. Talking to non-technical stakeholders. Prioritizing features or backlog management. Optimizing code performance or refactoring. Debugging complex or intermittent issues, estimating effort or complexity, mentoring juniors, and writing comprehensive documentation. As I was walking through that list, you may have been thinking to yourself, oh, I don't like doing that bit, or I know someone that's really good at that, or yeah, that's my favorite bit. And these are sort of clues to the kinds of things that you might be suited to on a team and might tell you which archetype you are, and that's something that I'll introduce soon. In any case, each of those tasks requires underlying aptitudes, and let's talk through those. Following established patterns requires an attention to detail, logical reasoning, discipline, and diligence. And some developers may get bored of applying the same thing over and over, and others might skip things because they miss them or don't understand why they are important. Researching new technologies or solution requires learning agility and at least a little bit of curiosity. Problem solving, and without an initiative, this job won't get done at all. Planning, build order, or system architecture requires abstract and logical reasoning, problem solving, and strategic thinking. Build order in particular presents abstract problems to solve, which a sequential thinker is best equipped for. Talking to non-technical stakeholders requires, unsurprisingly, someone who has communication skills, empathy, or an ability to take someone else's perspective, active listening, and interpersonal skills. Prioritizing features and backlog management requires critical thinking and judgment, strategic thinking, problem solving, and decision making, and is closely aligned with the architecture and non-technical stakeholder skills. Optimizing performance or refactoring requires a person with analytical thinking and problem-solving skills, attention to detail, abstract reasoning, and computational thinking, notably around how long things take. These people need to be able to perform transformations on the software so that it behaves the same, but is ordered or performs better. Debugging complex or intermittent issues requires all of the regular reasoning skills that we've talked about already, but at least a little tenacity. I once chased down a data race that took me 2 years to find, but had been in the software suite for 15. This requires analytical thinking and the ability to decompose tasks, sometimes without much detail. Experience and knowledge of the software, logical reasoning, and at least some pragmatism and realism. Mentoring juniors requires this communication skills that we talked about before, and empathy, leadership and guidance, and the ability to transfer knowledge. And writing comprehensive documentation requires attention to detail, communication skills, and an acuity for organising and structuring the documents, and an empathy for the reader. Okay, so those are the skills, the tasks, and the aptitudes that are required for each of those. How about we talk about the people that have those aptitudes? So who are our archetypes? I'm going to list 5 here. They are imaginary people, but you might, as I'm talking about these people, you might think of someone on your team who matches one or more of these archetypes. An implementer excels at executing well-defined tasks, following established patterns and conventions, and delivering consistent code. An innovator or researcher thrives on exploring new technologies, solving novel problems, and finding new solutions. An architect or planner is good at seeing the big picture, designing robust systems, and planning complex build orders. The communicator is good at bridging the gap between the technical and the non-technical stakeholders, and the debugger or troubleshooter is great at diagnosing complex issues, reverse engineering, and optimizing. Okay, so let's take a closer look at each of these archetypes and their strengths and weaknesses with respect to our list of tasks that the team needs. The implementer is good at following established patterns and writing comprehensive documentation, but might not be great at talking to non-technical stakeholders or at deciding which tasks should be prioritized. The innovator is the best choice for researching new technology, but is often a reasonable performer on a fair few of the other tasks. Not the most solid performer, but a good performer. The architect is great at planning, optimizing, estimating effort, and otherwise is a strong contributor. The communicator is important to have on the team for talking to non-technical stakeholders and prioritizing features and mentoring juniors, but is typically not great at following patterns or conventions, optimizing or refactoring, or debugging complex or intermittent issues. The troubleshooter is who you want on the team for optimizing and debugging, but is less good at planning build order or talking to non-technical types, and may lack the context and wide view for prioritizing features. So those are our archetypes. Here are a few things to bear in mind. All of these skills or tasks are important, and you'll need to do them even if you don't do them well. No developer is a pure archetype. In short, these people aren't real, and you might have a different mix of aptitudes. There is a difference between a skill and an aptitude, and it's possible to develop a skill where you don't have a talent, and growth is possible with effort, but you better make sure that you want that skill, because there's going to be an opportunity cost, and one of those costs might be at the cost of doing something that you're really naturally talented at. And it's helpful to think of people as having a mixture of these capabilities. So what's next? Well, I think as an exercise, you could look around your team and see who's who. Have a think about who's good at what, and use that as a way of deciding how to round out your team during your next recruitment, and how to better allocate work. And if you found this useful, let me know.